It's another absolute banger of a game, and Mango Chutneyson with white kicks off with pawn to king 4 here. It's the blitz section of this incredible tournament in Croatia. After 3 days of rapid, Gukesh is leading, Magnus chasing, so what can he do here against the world champion as he tries to gain ground? We're midway through the day of blitz, Gukesh has lost a couple, Magnus doing quite well. How's this one going to play out? Let's dive in. Gukesh opens with his also king pawn. They got 5 minutes each as the knights develop with a Winnie, and they get 2 seconds per move. That's called excrement. Magnus now essaying the Roy Lopez, named after J-Lo's uncle, of course. We love to see it, and the solid Berlin defense is elected as a response. Magnus goes with this one to cover his center. Gukesh now develops his bishop aggressively, and you could play with these pawns in the center, but Magnus hops the knight to c3po. Now we see castles, and watch this. He voluntarily gives up his bishop bear. Why would you do that? Well, after pawn recaptures, you've slightly compromised the structure and you want to start maneuvering with these knights. A number of people actually caught Magnus before the game, warming up in preparation for this kind of battle. He's in his element here, fixed structure, let's go ponies. He starts with bishop e3, trying to trade off one of these bishops. So Gukesh drops back, he's having none of it, and these kind of moves looking a bit more natural here, standard way to go, but Magnus moves the same piece twice. Normally a boo-boo, a no-no, you shouldn't do it in the opening, but let's see what he's got planned. For starters, we're in a brand new game here. He drops back with the bishop, and Gukesh now plays a bit weird. You know, gaining space with the pawn is good, nudging up with the queen, then into e6 to break the pin, activate the rook, b6, some very standard kind of ideas in these Berlin structures. But we get bishop to g4. Now he makes that move with a whoosh, but after the question is asked, he then voluntarily gives up his bishop pair. Really strange way to play. What's he actually achieved for that other than chopping off a knight? Now he drops back, bit timid, bit passive, and Magnus doesn't have to play like this, but he decides to keep it simple. Old man chess, get rid of any tactical stuff, pieces leaving the board, and he's in a middle game now with good knight versus bad bishop. Fine, it's not terrible, but in the IM Jeremy Silman school of chess, right, positional understanding, if the bishop's staring at its own colour pawn in the centre, then it's usually considered the bad bishop, right? So let's see how Magnus now tries to make some ground here. He starts with g3, queen d7 activates, h4, you always push the rook's pawns these days, it's just the bread and butter of the game. The bishop drops back, maybe hinting at f5, but Magnus just castles, says go for it, no worries, because after takes, doesn't really matter how you recapture, the point is the same. This becomes an absolute monster steed there, centralized, immovable from that outpost, really dominating the bishop. So we run back, no f5 was played, instead the bishop activates onto this aggressive
mushrooms.
The king gets out of dodge there, and again it's looking natural to gain some space, but Gukesh plays bishop d4 here. Now he's hinting at maybe chopping this bishop for knight, would make a lot of sense, shatter the pawn structure back. So Magnus ducks back here, but again he just lacks a bit of energy at this moment. You should probably go for something like b5, try and gain some queenside space. No one's worried about this, by the way, because then the rook slides over and you win the pawn back, and white's doing quite well there. So let's come back here. We didn't see takes, we didn't see b5, we instead saw bishop b6, entombing the bishop in a way, sitting there quite passively, and Magnus goes to work now with the incredible pawn g4, launching Gary the debt collector down the board. Andreas spinning the beats, and there's this positional idea. Gukesh tries to shut it down. Knight g3 anyway, queen e7, don't blunder your pawn. Magnus spots it. Rook a d8 and a4. Meets him halfway now, does Gukesh, not allowing Magnus to gain too much space. And queen e2 goes on a sneaky little maneuver. Gukesh whispers, do you even rook lift, bro? Wanting to go after this backward sensitive pawn, and Magnus nudges over, trying to invade. So king g7. How do you carry on trying to rip open the position here? What's the big thing we're trying to gain access to? Of course, it's the light squares. Magnus pushes forward. You never do this, of course. Positional suicide, and you lose on the spot tactically. And there is a threat to now take and then crash through here. You know, if pawn were to recapture. If rook takes back, you gain access here, of course. And really, you want this bishop here. This is the defensive setup that black should be looking for. The bishop would have been better on e7. However, the game is as it is. Now we see the queen swapped off. Few of Magnus's fans start bleating, but then he forgets which way knights are supposed to move. But actually no, he's going on a lovely journey here. Rook f6 slides over, pawn f3 and rook f4. Pseudo aggression there really. Where's it actually headed? And I love this now. Magnus takes on g6. Pawn recaptures. Why would he open all this pressure voluntarily? Well, he's now gained the h-file, lifts into the game, covers this backwards pawn and prepares things like knight d2, the other rook joining the party, so on and so forth. So in the game, we see this move of rook h8. Not the best. Maybe an immediate bishop d4 better, trying to probe, ultimately trying to move some pawns soon if you can. This bishop's terrible. But in the game, this was played. Now we see takes. King recaptures and knight d2. What a piece that is now compared to this bishop. And it's about to come here and take a pawn. And the rook can never cover. And if bishop d4, it gets kicked with c3. So that's why Gukesh drops back. Now after knight c4, he can cover, try and neutralize that seahorse. But rook b1 from Magnus prepares more expansion. c5, desperately trying to clamp. But look at this miserable piece. That one really needs to get back home, assess its life decisions. Now we see check played, king g7, king f2. And this is really instructive, because Gukesh moves the bishop and drops a pawn. But what if he just tried to wait on the position? Something like this. Where does white make progress? Everything's covered, Not easy to make the pawn breaks without opening up the black bishop as well. But there's this lovely maneuver. Let's just show one line. You can bring this rook all the way around to the b5 square and then win this pawn like that. Very nice. And if you ever go c6, well, the bishop's weak. You just can't really make it work. This can never spin round to defend, or you could just take twice here even, once the rook's not covering. Beautiful paralysis. So this was tried. Magnus takes the pawn. Rook a6, probably a better way to go for some counterplay, but Gukesh plays this. Check. Shoots it at Magnus. He ducks away with the king, takes his played, and how would you recapture? Test your understanding here. There's a right way and a wrong way. The right way is with the king. Well done if you saw that one. Because now, if rook a6, not played, you can go b4 to defend. You could also take, but let's just run with this line a second. And if c5 to undermine the pawn, you can now go c3. You keep this lovely clump, this dug trio of pawns there, and that's good for white. So king takes best, we get the check. Magnus staggers up the board, but it's actually a great move. The king's perfectly safe. The knight was covering this checking square. Gukesh attacks it, but Magnus now takes here. Obviously b4 also possible. Now we see takes with check. Before Gukesh can get too comfortable though, Magnus blocks it. Rook a6 back and rook d1 activates down that open file, or third open file. There's now 1, 2, 3. We see rook c6 check. The king steps back. Bishop d4 goes for the play, but after Magnus rook lifts, covering the square, king f6, he can now kick that one out of dodge with the c pawn. This one jumps into f2. Rook d7, and the writing's on the wall. This guy, the star of the show here, beautiful positional chess, and Gukesh cracks, but really he's got nothing. I mean, you could try bishop e1 to converge, but then there's this stunning finish. I'm not going to show you it, because I'm going to show you what happened in the game. It's the exact same idea. We get this one, and the best move here, same as I was about to show you in that line, can you find it? Sets up a mating net. So well done if you saw the move of knight to d8. Not an obvious tactic. Now whether black was going to crash through or the rook's here, doesn't matter. Actually puts the king in this unstoppable mating net, takes away the e6 square, and this mate is on the way. The pawns can't move, of course, completely stymied. So this is how the game could proceed. Kamikaze moves, and there's just nothing to do. That's a checkmate. So let's run back. That was the best move for Magnus, but he misses it. He takes on c7. Probably should have taken a second there. He was way up on time, but this also completely winning, and it forced resignation. Magnus is just killing it at this point. What to do? You can wait with the rook, but ultimately these two connected passed pawns are running through. Gukesh doesn't test Magnus's technique. Let's run back here, final position, and here's the standings on screen. Thanks very much for watching anyway. In case you missed the incredible game between Gukesh and Magnus played a couple days ago, have a look at the video on screen, and I hope to see you again soon. Cheers.